This is me aged 4, living completely in the moment. As we grow up, we become more aware of ourselves, and maybe a little bit less true to who we are. But there's something that has always been true to who I am. Be it drawing, graphics, film or music, art continues to define my life. So for the launch of my new website and social media, join me as I look back on my creative journey so far. I'm Bobby, and this is who I am. I was born in 2001. My mum and dad used to be graphic designers, and before computers they did everything by hand. Like here's my dad applying foil labels to mock up beer bottles. So I had exposure to art. And at a party soon after I was born, my brother was fascinated by The Pianist, which ultimately led to him having piano lessons. I would start playing just before I turned 6, so I also had exposure to music. I spent my early years drawing anything and everything, from family to things around the house to landscapes to abstracts. In the summer I got a sketchbook for our holiday to France. Unfortunately, my spelling wasn't as good as my drawing. My family also started giving me art books as presents. I responded with my own art, and soon with my own books. BAC Artist was born. As I turned 7, I started using Illustrator on the computer. I played around with colours, shapes and typography, and soon made a book of all my patterns. Around this time I got a calendar from the Tate Gallery in London. Its theme, abstract art. So I responded by designing my own calendar. In the new year I made a book about cool art, which combines my designs with some tips for drawing and my influences at the time. As I turned 8, my mum and dad drew me to the work of Peter Blake. I responded with my own piece, which I then painted by hand. By now I'd also become interested in playing cards, and got my first pack of Waddingtons. And I was continuing to make patterns on Illustrator. So I designed my own artist playing cards, with my own 4 suits. Perhaps inspired by my schoolwork, I also made my own pop-up book. The summer brought the World Cup and there was a great buzz around the football. So I invented my own football club. I took my best pattern on Illustrator, added my favourite colours of yellow and black, and created my own badge. Bobbham United was born. And we had just got kits made for my local team. So I chose a shirt from Nike's catalogue and Dad helped me enlarge the badge for the embroidery. I'd also become obsessed with my Panini sticker album. So I responded with my own album for a pretend competition based on my local team. This year Bobbham United would be the hosts. I mimicked the Panini graphics and created my own stickers, and added a football skill at the end. But I wouldn't be finished without creating my own artwork and playing cards. In the autumn I was preparing for my grade 2 piano exam. The year before I'd passed my grade 1 and played some songs at the school nativity. I'd also started to pick up bits of my brother's pieces by ear and mimicked them when I practiced. In this way I notated a few songs I'd heard on the radio. I also came up with a few of my own pieces, which I began notating properly. In 2011 I started watching Formula 1 and I quickly got into it. Soon I found this pack of vectors of all the cars, and this meant I could edit them in Illustrator. So I took the best car on the grid, recolored it in yellow and black, and added my own sponsors, including my very own football club. Bobster F1 Team was born. At the time, McLaren had a game called Hometown GP, where you could build your own F1 track on Google Maps and then race it on the virtual streets. So I designed my own track in Ghana and presented it alongside my car in the style of a Guardian newspaper supplement. I also made a Bobster steering wheel out of cardboard. In 2012 I went go-karting with my brother, and I'd planned to make an F1 style video of the race. So I made an animation based on the BBC F1 intro, using Photoshop and PowerPoint. My favourite F1 driver was Felipe Massa, who drove for Ferrari, and I also liked Jenson Button. So I designed a model pit garage in Illustrator and then assembled it by hand. I'd also got into McLaren's cartoon series called Tooned. So I responded with my own animation starring the Ferrari drivers, which I called Cartooned. I wrote my own script and got cartoons from a game called F1 Race Stars. I then used Photoshop to add the cars, factory and some elements from the McLaren series. Frame by frame, I moved and resized each element to create a stop animation. The summer also brought the Olympics, London 2012. I responded by creating my own sports brand inspired by Puma. Bobcat was born. Our final project of the school year was to make our own Olympic stadiums. So I designed the Bobcat Arena in Photoshop, based on the Emirates with a running track and arch. I then built the stadium with my friends, layer by layer. In 2013 I passed my grade 4 piano exam, and I'd got a lot better at picking up songs I'd heard. I could almost pick apart the notes in my head. Soon I got my hands on an iPad and I started playing around on GarageBand, which lets you build songs by layering up different tracks. So I responded to the music I liked with my own compositions. When I got a tune into my head, I could play it straight into my iPad and add a harmony, drums and bass. This song is inspired by a minimalistic band called the XX, and all the songs you hear in this video are my own compositions. In the autumn I started secondary school, and our first art project was on shoes. We started with pencil drawings, and then came up with surrealistic designs. I settled on an F1 design based on the car of my favourite driver, Massa. I first drew a visual, and then measured up my shoes to create each segment in Illustrator. I printed and cut out all the parts, and eventually got them to stick together. I finished off with a bauble for the helmet and some bottle tops for the wheels. In the new year I reused my templates to make my model out of clay. With its cars, football and food, by 2015 I'd become fascinated by Italy. So for a school project on upcycled art, I made a map from Italian products. I'd also become interested in the wider Romance-speaking countries. So I designed my own Monopoly board based on cities from Europe and Latin America. I ranked the cities by GDP to create my own groups. I then edited the Monopoly graphics with flags and photos to create my own board and cards. I finished off with my own currency, the Latin peso, based on the euro. Over the summer I became obsessed with the YouTuber Neistat, who had just started a daily vlog. So I started my own vlog for our holiday to Greece. And I learned how to film on a phone, edit using iMovie, and crucially how to tell a story. A year later I'd made 25 of these videos. I then got my hands on a GoPro and started editing on the industry-leading Premiere Pro. In 2017 I used my new setup on our holiday to Italy. And I'd go on to make a better paced, more cinematic and more engaging film. In the summer I was preparing for my grade 7 piano exam. I also did some ensembles for GCSE music, including a Latin jazz piece by Pink Martini. Alongside the classical music, I was learning how to improvise in different styles, and I developed some of my tunes into compositions using GarageBand. My pieces were inspired by indie pop, Latin, and the music used in YouTube videos, but summer was arguably my greatest influence. In the summer I also started my GCSE art project, our title Altered States. So I looked at the different definitions and pursued altered states of matter. Soon I came across an artist called Philip Gray, whose paintings almost surrealistically capture the contrast between fire and ice. I then looked at the master of surrealism, Salvador Dali, and I responded with investigations into melting, decay and posture. But I needed a story to bring it all together. With Dali, the melting watch saw time become flexible, revealing life and death in a piece reminiscent of sleep and dreams. In my painting, the melting thermometer brings warmth, revealing growth and loss in a composition based on summer and relaxation. In 2018, I became fascinated by YouTuber Mace. He had just started a series called Brew, where he creatively told a story each week. The following summer I went to Namibia, where we saw some incredible wildlife and met some amazing people who helped conserve it. Inspired by Dan's work, I launched my own YouTube channel and made a movie about the trip, with a voiceover, animations and video through my binoculars. 2020 brought the pandemic, which meant my exams were cancelled. So I made a film that simultaneously follows my life with and without COVID. In my final year of school, I passed my grade 8 piano exam. I also continued to compose, now using the industry-leading Logic Pro. In 2021, after my first year of university, all my friends were home for summer. So I turned 4 lads' trips into a story. I introduced each member of our group and told a few anecdotes. The following year I went on a few more trips I'd long wanted to. So I made a film about expression in the different performances and cultures. In 2023 I spent 6 incredible weeks in Italy, where I lived with Italian families and taught English to the children. I met some great people and had a lot of fantastic food. So I made a movie about the trip, which I narrated in English and Italian. I then returned to Bristol to graduate from my degree in biology and to start my master's in science communication. Over the last year I've made graphics, films and podcasts, and there's more to come. So I'm launching my own website and social media. I'm starting with my films, but stay tuned for science, art, music and blog posts. This has been my creative journey so far, but this is just the beginning.